Good afternoon, folks. Thank you so much for joining us today at this final session on our second day of Housing Washington. Thank you so much for being here for our discussion today on the Community Reinvestment Plan Homeownership Program chat. So we've got Ann Campbell, our guest from the Department of Commerce. She'll be moderating. And then speaking with her today, we have Daryl Smith from HomeSite. We have Linda Taylor from the Urban League of Metro Seattle. And we have Ansne Slaughter from the African American Leadership Forum out of Seattle. Real quick before I hand the mic over, we have two small housekeeping. First, if we notice folks as they trickle in, if you could make some space on the aisles, and then second, if you have questions, you can enter them into the question and answer feature on the chat. After we're done here today, if you'd like to provide some feedback to the organizers about this conversation, things you found helpful or insightful, that really helps us planning next year's Housing Washington to make sure it's meaningful. So without further ado, I'll go ahead and get it started. Let's give a warm round of applause for our panelists.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for being here. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the Community Reinvestment Plan and the homeownership programs that the homeownership unit is entrusted to handle. And then I'm going to dedicate the majority of the session to letting our panelists share their wisdom and experience and their plans for the funding that their programs have received through the community reinvestment programs that the homeownership unit has been entrusted to administer. So the Community Reinvestment Plan is the manifestation of a $200 million investment that the legislature put in place approximately 2 years ago. They charged Commerce with creating a plan through Community's Voice to figure out a way to begin to try to address the harms of the unfair, unjust war on drugs, and I am grossly paraphrasing, and through a series of meetings in person, online, and surveys headed and led by the Harriet Tubman Foundation, a 17-program plan was developed. It is on our website, and it focuses on education, it focuses on economic development, it focuses on re-entry, and it has these core overarching elements that the 17 funding programs are meant to address. And the bulk of those programs are focused on economic development and wealth building. And what is really, really key about the plan that was developed by community members is that the focus is on outcomes. And the focus is not on singular outcomes. The focuses are on encompassing and broad outcomes. So when you're dealing with public funding, a lot of the times you get one outcome, like you build affordable housing, or you build affordable homeownership opportunities, or you do the one outcome, or you're serving the one population. Community made it very clear that they wanted this funding to do more. And our speakers today are absolutely icons in the field of taking a small investment and doing more with it. So I'm very honored that they are choosing to be here to share their wisdom with us. So with that, the 4 community reinvestment programs that the homeownership unit has been entrusted to administer are the Blended Capital Enhancements Program, along with the Loan Guarantee Fund for a tune of approximately $41 million, the Black, Latino, and Tribal-led Community Lending Agency Support Programs, and the Homeownership Capital Accelerator Programs. You can find more detail about this on the Community Reinvestment Plan dashboard that is on the web. And I'm sorry, I'm old enough that I can't figure out a QR code, and you don't want me doing any technology this week. And so with that, I want to introduce again Daryl Smith, Executive Director of HomeSite, Ansne Slaughter, Board Member, Realtist, and Realtor of the African American Leadership Forum, and Linda Taylor, Vice President of the Urban League of the Seattle Metropolitan area. And with that, I will ask the panelists to introduce yourselves beyond your names and your titles, And, oh, wrong. Oh, hey, it would help if I was pushing the right buttons. See, this is exactly the kind of week I'm having, folks. So thank you for your grace. So with that, I'm going to go to the first question. Introduce yourself and please share how the community reinvestment funds are going to support your organization's missions. And with that, I'm going to stop talking.
Well, I'll kick things off. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for sticking it around to the last event of the day. I know it's been a long day, but I assure you we have some great information that we're looking forward to share with you today on this panel. Again, as Ann mentioned, my name is Anjanae Slaughter. I am now the housing director over at African American Leadership Forum. So I've kind of been promoted, well, kicked off of the board, and now in the director's seat, where I'm very passionate about the work that we're doing over at African American Leadership Forum. Our mission is really to revitalize and stabilize the Black, Latinx, and Indigenous communities within the King and Pierce County areas on the west side of the mountains. And we do that in 5 focus areas. In child welfare, we do it in education, we do it in law and justice, health and wellness, and where I reside is in our economic prosperity or housing division. We currently have an active $100,000 down payment assistance program that we are offering to Black and Latinx communities within our focus areas, within our region, to help them just cover the capital burden that we all face when it comes to purchasing our first homes, you know, and those that are disproportionately impacted by policies that we're going to talk about today within the war on drugs are really our focus area for that down payment assistance program. So we're excited about offering $100,000 assistance to Black and brown families. And with the community reinvestment funds that we're adding some additional programs that I think there might be a question later on, so I'll hold that for a little bit later. But we all in all look to offer wraparound services to help just the stability and revitalization of Black and brown communities within King and Pierce County.
Hello. Oh, it is on. My name is Linda Taylor, and I'm the VP of Housing and Financial Empowerment at the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. I've been there about 27 years, so I've seen a lot of things. We went through Katrina, of course, and helped those people, and we're just moving on. We do it in several ways. We do it through housing, workforce, health, entrepreneurial center, and education. So we also help people with their criminal records. We have seen people come out of their car and purchase a home. There was a home that was actually vacant, ready to go. The people were working every day, living in their car. So we have a huge homeless outreach team, and they are excellent. Let's see what else. So you want to know what the community reinvestment will do for us?
Yes, ma'am.
It's going to do so many things for us. We are so excited about it. We will have down payment assistance, and with this down payment assistance, we are just preparing the people. We are not a mortgage company. We are not bankers. We just prepare people for home ownership. And that's what we plan to do, and help people stay in their homes that are there. We have a huge foreclosure where we do $60,000, up to $60,000 to help you save their home, and we do mediation. And what distinguishes us from a lot of the other organizations is all of our counselors are HUD certified. They went through that test. So I believe we have educated about 27 people, because we do educate people from other nonprofits to become HUD certified. And so they are the best of the best. Not that anybody else can't do it, but we pass them off once they have, once clients have reached their goals. We put them with some of the best mortgage companies that are out there, and/or brokerage. We partner with Homeside. We partner with we partner with quite a few of the banks that are out there. Did I answer all my questions?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I'm up next. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Darrell Smith. I'm really pleased to be here to share a little bit about our perspective on the Community Reinvestment Program, and I'm especially pleased and proud to share the stage with these two brilliant women as Ms. Taylor. I call her Ms. Taylor because we go back that far. We have the honor of working with Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle. So I lead an organization called HomeSite. We are a 32-year-old place-based community development corporation in Southeast Seattle. We also happen to be a statewide community development financial institution, which essentially means that we're a mortgage lender. We perform mortgage services, but a little more creatively than a bank. So we're dedicated to helping families build generational wealth through home ownership. We have never built a property that is for rent. We don't own any buildings. We provide the opportunity for low and moderate income families, particularly in Black and brown communities and communities that have been underserved, to grow their own generational wealth. We are happy and satisfied when your family builds wealth. It's not about how many buildings we can build and hold on to. Little different perspective from what we do in terms of some of my colleagues in the sector. Not to say that that work isn't important and necessary, but for us it really comes down to how do we make sure that the communities we serve, whether they're in Southeast Seattle or Central District, how do they keep from being displaced? How do they continue to grow and build wealth for their families in place, the places that they help to create and make wonderful, especially against the huge mark of gentrification that we've seen in Seattle from the Central District pushing all the way south. So for us, the communities that we serve have been very much affected by the war on drugs. And so our job as an organization, a CDFI and a CDC, is to make sure that we can marshal some of these funds, leverage, and create more opportunities for those members that would qualify for these funds. So we already do a plethora of down payment assistance. The lion's share of our loans are for folks that make 80% of area median income or below. We also have to get creative, so we offer lots of different DPA down payment assistance. We have the Social Justice DPA Fund, which is 0% interest, $10,000 that can be used anywhere in the state as one example. We've created the Sam Smith Down Payment Assistance Fund for Black families specifically, for those folks that make between 80 and 120, recognizing that once you get above 80% area median income, all the help goes away, right? Those are the families we used to talk about as middle-class families that are really struggling with remaining in Seattle and King County and Pierce County. So we try to be as creative as we can. The new program for CRP is going to be incredible because I'm going to announce right now that we're going to create a new first mortgage program for those beneficiaries that fall under the CRP program. We're going to go between 4.5% and 5% interest, an incredibly low interest loan for those community members that have been the victim of this. They've been held back from building generational wealth, so we need to supercharge this effort. So if we can create a new mortgage loan program, and we are a portfolio lender, I know I'm going on my answer, I'm going to stop here in a minute. We're a portfolio lender, meaning we have our own money to lend, and we can keep those loans in-house at HomeSite for 30 years and service them. And so by creating a new first mortgage program, we hope that we can actually help more families become homeowners and catch up and build that generational wealth. We also are going to bolster a fund we call the Buyer Readiness Fund, which allows us to improve the debt-to-income ratio for those affected community members so they too can qualify for more home. The lower the interest rate, the more buying power you have. We've been experiencing a high interest rate environment. That's starting to come down a little bit, but we can do a lot more. So these funds will really help us serve the community in a way that we've not been able to do before.
Another thing we're going to do, that was good, Jen.
I was like, I think we all got more things to say.
I do too, yeah. Everybody thinks of something else. Another thing we're going to do with our funds are help seniors fix up their homes, so to build generational wealth. So when they do sell or their children do take it over, they won't have to sell it immediately because they can't afford to fix it up. So that's another thing we plan to do with our funds.
And if I can add as well, over at ALF, our existing $100,000 down payment assistance program, this did not come out of the Community Reinvestment Plan. And so the underwriting criteria are a little bit different. This program currently exists for families, individuals that make within 80% of their area median income per household size. So what the CRP funds are going to allow us to do is increase the affordability or the income per household, so we can actually look up to 140% instead of just 80%. So that's going to be major when we talk about the middle class families and affordability. We are also looking forward to addressing the DTI issue, because debt relief is major. For a lot of those that are making under 100% area median income, they're forced to rely on loans, on credit cards in order to make ends meet. And what we want to do, I mean, we know how that hinders someone's chances of getting qualified for a mortgage. So we want to remove that barrier by offering a $25,000 grant towards families to pay off debt to qualify them for mortgages. So that's another way that we're going to be able to use the CRP funds to add to our existing programs. And then lastly, we want to continue to remove the burden, the upfront capital burden that comes with purchasing a home. For any of those in the room that have purchased homes, you're familiar with your earnest money. That's 1 to 3% of the purchase price of their home due within 2 to 3 days of getting in contract on that house. And oftentimes our assistant programs just don't kick in fast enough to cover that cost. And these are thousands of dollars. We're talking about on Western Washington, our families are looking at purchasing houses between $400,000 and $600,000. Well, that's easy to, you know, your earnest money could easily be $4,000 to $6,000, if not more. So we want to cover that with an earnest money grant that also does not have to be repaid, to remove the burden, the capital burden when getting into homeownership. So we're increasing the income, we're getting rid of some of the income restrictions, or at least increasing the cap. We're adding some debt relief, $25,000 per household, and we're also introducing earnest money grants, which I have never seen in this industry when it comes to increasing access to homeownership. So we're really excited about that.
Excellent, excellent. And for those of you who are a little washed in acronyms, DTI is debt to income, CRP is community reinvestment programs, and congratulations, everyone. This is exactly what I meant when I was asking. Please tell us about your programs and how they're enhanced. So, and I couldn't have asked for a better segue. So, we all know that folks who have been impacted by the war on drugs and the inconsistent, the unfair, and the disproportionately harsh sentencing and enforcement of the various laws that have been in place since roughly the 60s, have had exponential impacts on these communities, on our Black and brown communities. So as a result of not only of those impacts, but of systemic racism over the centuries, what institutional barriers and roadblocks are impacting the communities and the families that we're trying to help, and that your programs are specifically designed and are being enhanced to serve? And Anjane, I'd like to start with you, because you spoke to grants that were specifically to reduce that debt to income ratio that is often a barrier for people who are looking to buy their homes, or in some cases is a barrier for people who are trying to buy a car. So I would like you to start with the conversation on that.
Absolutely. And first, I just want to kick off by saying that we have to remember that the war on drugs was not one that happened in front of our faces, that the war on drugs happened on a policy level, largely on the policy level, which excluded and marginalized, disproportionately marginalized Black and brown communities. And we saw the war on drugs kind of permeate in all systems, most systems that we face on an everyday life, right? So whether it's education, healthcare, employment, certainly housing, and just access to other benefits, right? So I first want to just put us in that place that we're talking about a war on drugs that happened on the policy level. And when talking about housing, we can look at it in both the public and the private spaces. We saw policies starting in the 1980s, with the Anti-Drug Abuse Act, that put punitive measures, that gave public housing authorities punitive measures for drug use on and off their properties. It first just started out with eviction, but then 10 years later, in 1990, those policies expanded to not only the tenants, but the family members of the tenants, or any guests that you had in your space, in your home, if they were using drugs of any kind, then you could be subject to eviction. 6 years later, in 1996, we saw these, and these are national policies that our Congress passed. Now we saw that not only punitive measures are in place, but also just based off suspicion. And we saw this carry out in other criminal justice laws as well, where you just had to be suspected of drug use. It didn't even have to be proved with pictures or drug tests, but that your family could face eviction just based on the suspect of drug use happening in the home. So what we're really talking about here is evictions on people's records. And we know, as Ann mentioned, that Black and brown families were disproportionately targeted when it came to these policies. So although the policies may have been race neutral, in practice they were not. And the data shows that, and it's evident in the Community Reinvestment Plan. I encourage you all to research the Community Reinvestment Plan that we actually passed here in Washington State, along with the Social Equity and Cannabis Task Force study that was done to really highlight the numbers here within our region. But it's evident in the data that Black and brown folks were disproportionately impacted by these policies. So how does that impact and create barriers later on? Well, it's tough to have long-term employment or even higher levels of education without a permanent address due to evictions. When you have evictions on your record, these public housing authorities after 1990 were able to ban you for over 3 years to just have stable, affordable housing on one of their properties. We saw this impact healthcare, because when you're evicted, you're subject to possibly homelessness, and we know that when you're homeless, you're also subject to more chronic forms of illness, right? Disease, even food insecurity. So we can start to see how just war on drug policies had larger implications and detrimental impacts on communities. So that's what that's what we're here to address now. What solutions can we think about? Well, we really have to think about solutions in all of these different system areas. So not just within housing, but also within law and justice, within education, within child welfare, right? Because it impacted all systems. And specifically, some solutions that I jot down, you guys. I took a little bit of notes, and I came prepared today. One, I strongly encourage all of our policymakers, lawmakers that are in the room or even here attending our conferences or that we are constituents of, to strongly fight against these bans for affordable housing based on eviction records. The same way we were able to expunge individuals' criminal records that had, convictions based on marijuana use or sale, we should be able to also remove eviction records that were based solely on drug use. This is going to help impact people's access to homeownership. We all operate in the housing space, where even private landlord owners, they're looking at people's eviction history and they're using that as a criteria to determine whether or not they can enter into their homes. So we strongly need to be encouraging against these bans for housing based on drug use evictions, and expunging these evictions off of people's records so they no longer harm them. And we also need to look into our underwriting criteria when it comes to employment history. If we know someone faced an eviction, then they might have some irregular employment. They might have had to move around to different jobs. So we strongly need to be talking with our mortgage lenders, with our CDFIs, on how we can be creative when it comes to analyzing individuals' employment history as well as their eviction record. So those are just a couple solutions that I have, you guys. And I'll pass it on to you, Linda.
You said it all. I just want to add to that, because she said a lot and really just about said it all. Another thing that's hindering people are their LFOs. Yes, indeed. Okay. That is really, really, really hindering people. People believe they cannot vote because they have legal fines and obligations, and they can. And so that is really impacting us in a whole lot of ways. So another thing about those legal fines and obligations is the waiting period once they've been paid. In Washington State, there is generally, on most convictions, after you pay off your LFOs, if you're ever able to, a 5-year waiting period. In Oregon, if you pay off your LFOs, you can go expunge your record the next day. So that's huge for people. I had a couple come to me just in tears. They had been living in an apartment building for about 10, 15 years. For the longest, that was their home. That someone bought the building, and they had to do background checks. Well, unbeknownst to him, his wife had a criminal background, and they had to move. They had 30 days to move. So what do? Sell them a house. And I believe they went to Homesite actually and purchased. It was some time ago, but they could purchase. They couldn't rent. So if they both didn't have good credit, it wouldn't have happened. So I just, there are people out there that it won't happen for. But thank you for that, Anjane. Thank you.
And I guess I want to frame this up. Anjane did such a great job of talking about all of the upstream effects, and there are decades and just pages of stuff, most of it really bad, that affect folks. And so I think about the downstream reality when they show up to Homesite, right? We're not a bank. We can be a lot more creative. We have in-house underwriting. Here's the deal. Find a bank out there that charges 1% down from the buyer, that's what we charge, and a credit score of 620. Right? Most banks are like, oh, we'll talk to you when you have a credit score of 720 to 750 and you have 20 to 25% down. Oh, and we're going to look at all of those backgrounds and what have you. Because we're a portfolio lender, we can be a lot more creative. But the effect of what Anjane laid out is that even when they come to Homesite, we sometimes have to work with folks for a while. They work with our HUD certified counselors, and unlike a bank, we will spend a year, 2 years if need be, getting that buyer ready. What the CRP program can do is help us jumpstart and supercharge this creatively so that we can help more families achieve home ownership and catch up on generational wealth that they were denied because of the things that Anjane laid out. So it's incumbent upon us, all the agencies that we run, to be as creative as we can be and to really take into consideration who our clients are and what they've had to put up with and face. So again, I'm not disparaging our financial institutions out there. We partner with some on CRA stuff, and they're good to partner with CDFIs and CDCs. We appreciate that. We need their money. You whispered it, I said it out loud. But the reality is we can do things that they can't. And we should, because that's what our mission is all about, right? When folks show up at Urban League or Homesite, they probably have gotten a no from someplace. And we step in and try to make a real difference because we're going to work more closely with that client. We're going to provide creative solutions that other financial institutions can't. And so CRP is set up as a response to the harm that was done. So it's incumbent upon us to really take those funds and be as creative as we can be, and to push ourselves, frankly, and to maybe be a little bit uncomfortable, and to take more risks. That's what we're supposed to do.
And if I could just add, piggybacking off of what Daryl just said, just because we work with these communities every day. I am a part of this community. I identify with this community. I'm sure we all probably do. And just through my lived experience, my professional experience, I will tell you that probably the largest harm that came out of the war on drugs is just the distrust within community and government space. It's so apparent, and it's huge, and it's not just within government space, but also within banking institutions. These financial institutions that have over decades denied and not have gone out of their way to be creative, to bring communities in. There's a bad taste in communities' mouth, and that will often that's all that it takes to prevent them from even taking the first step to securing a loan or signing up for a class or a workshop. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, in addition to trying to secure programs that more so meet our communities where they're at, but also show them that we have the representation, that we identify with the communities that we serve, because our staff, our team members are from the communities that we serve. So we are legit representatives, and we know the harm and the distrust distrust that we all face, that we all feel, right? The discrimination that we've all felt. So within our programs, removing that barrier, just so that people know that you belong and that you exist and you are the center of the work that we do, is a huge part of removing the barriers that have came down from the war on drugs and that ultimately sidelined or just marginalized communities. So we're every day, all three of us, going, every day fighting to undo some of that distrust. And as the community liaison that African American Leadership Forum is between the state and the community, it's really been a great position to help, rebuild some of that trust that was lost. So thank you.
Making people believe, having people believe that they can buy. Most of people do not believe that they can do it. I don't know if it's they don't believe they're worthy, or that they just can't do it. I'm not sure which one it is, but we've spent a lot of time saying, you can do this. You pay rent, you are going to pay somebody. Yeah, and there's a saying in our office, you're going to buy a house, just who's going to own it at the end of the day.
Ooh, that's a good one.
We love to sort of say, again, we don't do rental. We only do homeowners from like, hey, you're building equity. It just might be for somebody else. Let's have it be for you, right? That's the deal. So, and there's something that I'm going to name, which I think has been talked about, but all of our agencies, all of our staff members are from the community, and the messenger really matters in this work. And what we're really dealing with, I think, is community trauma. This is trauma, and that's a real thing, right? My wife works in the mental health, industry, and so this is a real thing when someone comes in and they have shame, or they've been through difficult times, or they've been told no, that they can't do it, or maybe I made some bad decisions with debt, these sorts of things. So there's a lot to overcome to build that trust, and that's a lot of the foundational work that goes along with this every day.
Thank you so much for that. I have several takeaways that I'm putting in my hip pocket for our next funding rounds. So okay, and so our last sort of structured question here is, what are 2 and 3 ready and actionable items that you would like the audience to take away from this session?
Well, I'll go again, as we're just kind of playing musical chairs up here a little bit.
Way more comfortable chair.
A lot more comfortable, yes.
I can't sit on bar stools.
So some action items. One, there's a lot of people that still don't understand what the war on drugs is and why are we still talking about it in 2024 when that was something that happened in the 80s, right? Well, an easy thing that that's free, that you guys can all take away with you, is just the knowledge and the perspective that there are long-term detrimental consequences that came about through policy that was enacted in the 80s that's still carried on today. Generationally, right? So one, just because something may have happened in the past, we're still facing trauma, as was discussed, and just economic disadvantages that impact our families today. I know as a millennial, as a young person, 40% of millennials are receiving gifts to purchase homes in today's market. Well, I'll tell you, my family and none of the families that we're talking about that were largely impacted by the war on drugs have that access to that sort of capital, right? That's 40% of millennials. That's a big number. That is how unaffordable our housing market is. And that's a national statistic. That's not just for our region in Western Washington. So one, just know that we're still trying to pick up some pieces and repair harm and bring justice to communities that were impacted. So let's continue to have these conversations as we all go back into our individual spaces. The other thing, and I'm just gonna throw this out there again, that we gotta remove sole drug evictions off of eviction records because you didn't have to prove that someone was even using drugs in order to evict them from their home. And that's gonna have detrimental consequences in the public and private housing space. That's gonna limit their access to homeownership, stability, which, as I mentioned before, has all of these other detrimental impacts that include healthcare, education, and income. Good question.
3 takeaways. Okay, I'm very passionate about LFOs. I really am. that hinders so many things. And then when I heard about Oregon, I just, was not happy. Something I didn't mention is our reverse mortgages. Our community believes reverse mortgages are horrible. We only give you reverse mortgage counseling. That's all we do. That's all we do. Because we can't give you the reverse mortgage itself. So we have to prepare the next generation when we're gone, when I'm gone, to take over your property, because that's an easy way to lose your property if your heirs are not prepared. So preparing your heirs to take over that property is something I'm extremely passionate about. So that's where we come in with our credit and budget classes. And I tell this quick little story. We had this young lady come in, and she brought her son to the homeownership classes all the time. And she passed away. And her son was about 10, 12 years old, so he went to live with his grandmother. And so she had purchased a home, but he had sat in all the homeownership classes, home club, everything. And I think they went to Home Site and purchased their home. In fact, I'm sure she did. And they were behind on their mortgage because she had passed away. Well, the little boy that was 12 years old told his grandmother, let's go to the Urban League. They'll help us. They helped us get in the home. And we were able to save that home. So there is money out there to save your home, to help build that generational wealth. And grandma that was living in an apartment moved into the house and continued the mortgage payments. The little boy is a grown man now and has that house.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, one thing, I think, first of all, the architects of the Community Reinvestment Plan, of which Anjane was a member of that group, are to really be applauded about making this happen for Washington State. But the fact is, largely, the community doesn't really know about this yet. And so we need all of your help in this room to understand the basics of the program, right? It's for 5 counties in state of Washington, Western Washington, King, Snohomish, Pierce, Spokane County, where we sit right now, and Grant County. We also need to make sure that people understand the parameters of the program, what the area median income limit is for access to it. And most of all, we need the community through all of your networks to know that there are options for folks that maybe didn't think it was possible. So the structure of how the program works, you can get in the weeds if you want, but just having the basic takeaways, just so that when you're at the barbershop, at the hair salon, at the car wash, in church, wherever your networks take you, let the community know that this program is now out. It's just now starting to roll out. The funds are just being, starting to get contracted to agencies like the Urban League and Home Site and others. And we're here to support the community in this way. So please be ambassadors for this work so that we can make sure that all of the community members that were affected by this have a real shot at opportunity through the CRP program.
Something we forgot to say.
Yeah.
Really, tell people. Tell somebody.
And to piggyback too off of Daryl's comment, the allocation, the $200 million that created the Community Reinvestment Fund, was a one-time installment. So this is not going to be, we don't currently on the books have any sort of reallocation date or time for when this fund is going to be refilled, right? I mean, $200 million, it sounds like a lot of money, but only $138 million of that went towards economic development, and then even within the economic development, there was like 5 different buckets of where the money got spread out. So these funds, especially when we're talking about $100,000 per household, down payment assistance, funds go fast. And these are, they're not forgivable loans right now. We have them baked in at 0 interest and to be repaid when someone pays off their 30-year mortgage. So maybe in 30 years we'll have some more money, but we need more money right now. And so this is something that we need to press to our legislators, we need to press to our representatives, our senators, press to the new incoming governor to have more money refilled into this pot so that for future generations we can continue to help increase access to homeownership and just other economic development opportunities, because you can't, some of the funds are going to business as well as housing within the community reinvestment plan. So I just wanted to add on that. It's currently not being refilled, so please refill the pot.
Oh, excellent. Okay, and before I open up the floor to questions, I wanted to share a couple of things that I took special note of. Number one, the slide deck that will be functional will be published through the materials, and it will also include a link to the Washington Homeownership Resource Center, which should be everyone's first stop on their pathway to homeownership, or any questions they have regarding foreclosure or anything about maintaining or stabilizing their home situation. They have housing counselors that are well versed in all of the programs that our wonderful panelists have talked about, and they can look at every inquiry and every family's special circumstances and help them to make educated and informed choices. I also wanted to share with everyone that Commerce has made a budget request to the governor's office to recapitalize the community reinvestment account for the 25-27 biennium. So when that gets published through the Office of Financial Institutions website, Office of Financial Management's website, we will be sure that that gets shared out so that we can use that to help inform our decision makers within our legislative bodies that this funding needs to be continued and we need to continue making these investments. I want to say I am so grateful for you all to be sharing your knowledge, because one of the big things that I heard is that our institutional investors that we have now, the depository institutions and the non-depository institutions, are doing a fine job at serving their existing marketplace. But there are equally valid, equally low-risk pathways that will provide homeownership opportunities and low-cost financing tools for people whose lifestyles don't fit into that one-size-fits not quite most, that our big financial institutions are choosing to follow. And since there is a vacuum and nature abhors a vacuum, I thank you all for leading the way and helping to fill that vacuum. And I think that as a policy organization, that Commerce really needs to absorb what you are teaching us and use that to inform our future programs. And so on that note, I want to say thank you and open the floor for questions.
Actually hand me that microphone, I'll stick it. Oh, great, thanks. And while I'm doing this, actually, I think this question might be directed to you, Anne. Is it possible to request a specific set aside for Black developers to construct multiple types of new homes for next year's award?
Well, you can always request a specific set aside from your legislator or from the governor's office, because those are the folks who have the authority to make set asides happen. The level of detail and the level of nuance about whether or not that can happen is entirely up to those elected officials.
We have another one through the app, which asks, are drug-based evictions without verification still a mechanism being used today, or is this been made illegal?
It has not been made illegal because there's precedent set in those policies that date back to '96. We haven't had any new public housing authority policy to redact it. So it is still legal and it's still happening across the country.
It's definitely happened when they pull your background check. It's there. It's not off of. No, it's there.
Run it back to you.
Good afternoon. This is Musawi Homesite. I don't have a question, but just a comment. I just wanted to add to this great panel what they have said. like my boss Daryl said, and I'm very proud of him, it's about being ambassador of folks out there. But one thing I wanted to say is those folks that we're trying to help, let's let them know that they're not buying their dream home, they're buying their starter home. Because when they get in, those, for example, those who bought 10 years ago, their house has appraised in value where it's almost double now. So let's try to get folks to know that they just need to get in the market, and from there they'll be better off.
You're absolutely right. I heard a young lady say, get in where you fit in.
I love that.
That's nice. Here you go.
So my name is Durahima, and I remember the beginning of the CRP thing. I still have my draft binder at home. So I have a question about the modifications, and I know one from Urban League. I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see. So the Urban League said you were doing modifications for seniors. Is anybody else using their money to help with modifications?
Modifications come from another place. Loan modifications, that's something else that doesn't come from the Department of Commerce. That comes from your mortgage company.
Okay, because I remember I thought it was part of it. And then the other question is when you talked about how we can, once LFOs are paid off, that we can get things vacated. I am willing to work with you on that to get that put in legislative, because I think it's something that needs to be done.
I'd love that. I'd love that. See me afterwards. I'd love that. We have a department that's working on it, but they're just not as passionate as I am about it.
And I would like to share that in our blended capital enhancements and loan guarantee pot of funding, that I have confirmation from the team that there is at least one organization that has included loan modifications as part of the book of business that they're going to be using their funding award to accomplish. So thank you.
I have a question. To what degree are you seeing the need to also be working on the appraisal system in the country? I had recently seen that HUD was working on some sort of big study. I can't remember, there was an acronym to it, but I can't remember what it was.
PAVE Act?
What?
PAVE?
Yes, that one. Mm-hmm. So to me, all of this, the assistance and all of that, the debt reduction, fantastic, right? But there's systems like the appraisal system that are going to stop some people from getting to where they want to go.
Absolutely, and I'll talk to this question. Appraisals, for those that aren't familiar with appraisal bias, it is a true issue that currently and has been an issue in our housing market, where Black and brown families, their houses just do not appraise as at the same rate as our counterparts. And so there are, on the federal level, there has been a task force that's put together, the PAVE task force, to address this. But that's from very high level policy. We need to do things on the ground to make sure that families directly are receiving the wealth that their hard-earned wealth that they deserve. And a few different things that I know are happening right now, not within African American Leadership Forum, although we are always thinking about new programs and where we can get new fundings to address these injustices. But as a realtist, a member of the National Association of Real Estate Brokers, we are out actively encouraging more representation within the appraisal industry. It's a very white and a very old industry, and it's a very male-dominant space. We want more Black, brown, young, women, and men to enter into that space as professionals, because we know that once you have the understanding, the education, and the passion, that's how we can, on the ground, start doing something to combat the appraisal bias that's out there. We're not going to be able to solve the issue if we can't address it on the individual level, because it's on the individual level where the bias is taking place. So we're doing that through NAREB. And also, to the question about Black developers, we do have a Black developer program within NAREB. You guys can look up more information on the 2 projects that are working on our website at nareb.com. We are the premium network of Black real estate professionals across the country, founded in 1947.
Yeah, I have personal experience with this. A couple of lifetimes ago, when I was a real estate broker, I had my house reappraised, refinanced, back in the day when interest rates would allow you to do that sort of thing. And that appraiser, an old white guy, did comparable sales of my house, not even near my house. I gave my own comps to the lender, and the difference was about $85,000 that I would have lost in value based on that appraisal. So we know this is real. We know it happens every day, and Anjane, laid it out quite nicely that the industry is very skewed male, old, and white, and that needs to change. So when it comes to this huge issue, organizations like NAREB and others are really working at this because this is a country problem, not just a Puget Sound problem. And then on black developers, there's a big push right now. We're very pleased that the Department of Commerce is supporting this effort. At Homesite, we've raised the Field Order 15 fund, which provides upfront grant money for feasibility for black and brown developers, a low-interest pre-development loan, and a warm handoff to construction financing. Right now, we've awarded 11 grants so far to black developers, which equals, if all those projects come through, 239 new housing units in Tacoma and Seattle built by black folk. And we hope that through the efforts of the Black Home Initiative Network, of which we are all active, we'll do a lot of matching and make sure that the community that looks like those developers has the opportunity to purchase those homes and start building their own generational wealth. So we're very happy about the institutional support that comes from Commerce, Washington State Housing Finance Commission, individual investors, and philanthropy, frankly, that recognizes that we have a legacy that we want to stand back up, which is the creation of housing in a housing shortage to the nth degree region, which we are sitting in, that those opportunities of creation actually for community come from the communities that look like them as well.
So on the appraisal level, everybody was spot on about it, and it is a national issue. So I go to a leadership forum called Whitney Young Leadership Forum. Whitney Young was one of the architects of the National Urban League that brought training into the Urban League. So last year, or year before last, that's how long people have been really, really talking about appraisals. We had the head of the National Appraisers Association or something come speak to us about it, and he just laid it out there plain and simple. What we need to do is pay appraisers to train people, because what they do now, you have to have so many training hours under a appraiser before you can go out and appraise yourself. He said, "Who do you think I'm going to train? I'm going to train my son before I train yours." I mean, he was just real clear about it. So no one pays them to train people. And so that's one of the solutions.
Yes.
Anne, can I add something on the appraisal stuff?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, thank you. Hi.
Introduce yourself.
Hi, Erin Klicka, Washington State Department of Financial Institutions. So I was really glad to have appraisal bias come up over and over again in listening sessions. So the Washington State Department of Licensing, the Human Rights Commission, and DFI, Department of Financial Institutions, came together to see what we could do. So a couple of things that have happened in the last year. DOL in the winter, Department of Licensing did do a rules change, and so the requirement that Linda's talking about, where you would have to have a mentor, there is an alternate option now, so you do not need that mentor. It's an RCW. Or in WAC, I can find it. I'll send it to you. DOL has it. And then we also did a training for mortgage loan originators, so they knew how to identify appraisal errors. And so if you file a complaint with the Department of Licensing, you see the short appraisal, they see like the 2 feet behind it. And so if it was done incorrectly, they have the ability to educate, fine, or remove their license. So that is in play. And then we also did a training for housing counselors with the Human Rights Commission as well. And then, yes, HUD has some amazing guidance that is out, so they've added some additional. We have a HUD representative right here. I don't know if they cover that area, but maybe they do know who in the agency does, where there's now some required notices and some additional indicators that they're sharing. And then there's also some multi-agency information that's come up for more accountability for MLOs as well. So if anyone's interested in that, come talk to me. I am not the expert, I'm more of the convener, but happy to chat more.
Good to know.
Thank you so much, Erin. And we are almost right at time. I wanted to just share with everyone that the Department of Licensing is currently recruiting for a real estate appraiser commission member. They're looking for one. I just got the announcement today at almost noon, and they have qualifications in order to apply to be a real estate appraisal commissioner. But one way to start changing the rules and to get more clarity, get more equity into the process is to get more representation. And let me tell you, even if we don't qualify to be appraiser commissioners, we can still show up to those meetings and we can listen to them and we can turn our cameras on and show our presence and our faces so that they aren't doing decision making without an audience. On that note, I'm going to paraphrase our lunchtime keynote speaker quote that really, really hit home and say, thank you for letting me have a seat at your table and to learn from you and to be able to take things away that I can incorporate to help take all of your lessons learned and expand them across our state. So thank you so much for your time, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.